Hi, Founder fans. Jason here, and today's founder is George Washington. Now, I know we just spoke about George Washington yesterday, but that's okay. Yesterday we spoke a lot about his early life, but we did not speak much about this tiny little book. It is George Washington's Rules of Civility. Now, it's not actually George Washington's. This book was actually written in France on how to be proper and civil in your life. There was an English translation that George Washington got his hands on at just 16 years old. And as an exercise as a teenager to become a more proper, not a nobleman, but higher ranking level of society, George Washington copied all 110 of these rules. Full title, Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation. Now, behavior does have the U in the word behavior, just FYI. Now, I want to do something a little bit fun today. I have actually taken down my top 10 favorite of George Washington's Rules of Civility. And I'm going to go through them. They're not really in a top 10 order. They're in order as they're found in the book. But I am going to grade them on several, whether they are good advice, if they are funny, because some of them are outlandishly funny, or if they're uptight. Because sometimes George Washington, he's just a little hoity-toity for my taste. And I think to most modern Americans, some of the things we're going to discuss are a little like, okay, bud, okay. So, first rule is already up there. What do we think? Rule the first. Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those that are present. And I've labeled this as a good rule. This is just generally a good rule. And I am going to say, I picked a lot of these rules not just because I like them, but there's a lot of repetitiveness in the 110 rules. And I read through them all today. And I also kind of aimed for ones that kind of embody a larger portion of the rules themselves. And this is the first one. There's a reason this is the first rule. I'm going to pop the good back off there so you can see it. The reason this is the first rule is it is very practical. Every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect. Say please and thank you. If someone's talking, listen to them. As I try to explain to my children pretty frequently. It's just, in general, a very good rule. And it's the basis for the whole book. But we're going to move on now to the next rule. And the next rule, very conveniently, is rule number 2. Or the second, as Washington put it. And that is, when in company, put not your hands to any part of the body not usually discovered. Now I'm going to tell you right away, I gave this one a big old hilarious. This is really funny to me. It's the second rule. And he's literally saying, don't put your hands where the sun don't shine. Not usually discovered. Again, this one also counts as a good rule. You should be touching yourself in unpleasant areas in public, probably. And it is just generally a good rule, but the way it's written, the way it sounds, and the fact that it's the second thing they talk about, I just think is absolutely fascinating. Now, the next rule we're moving into is we're skipping number 3 and going to rule the 4th. In the presence of others, sing not to yourself with a humming noise, nor drum with your fingers or feet. Now, this one, again, of course, I'm a little biased about this. Having played music most of my life, I have a tendency to drum on my hands and feet. And as longtime viewers of the channel realize, I have a tendency to sing to myself every once in a while. So this one is a little, I feel like he's coming right at me with it. That being said, I suppose it's not the worst rule because you can get on people's nerves. But, I mean, come on. What's wrong with singing to yourself a little bit? Come on, George. This one, sorry, bud. Oh, wrong button. This one gets a good old-fashioned uptight. Cool off, George. Have some fun sometimes. All right. So, moving into the next rule. This is the rule the 7th, and I assure you they're not all in the first 10 or 20. But, and some of these I will elaborate a little more on because, like I said, there was a lot of repetition in this book. But this one, the 7th one, says, put not off your clothes in the presence of others, nor go out of your chamber half-dressed. Again, this is one of the ones that pops out to me as it's just funny. A lot of these, especially the earlier ones, they seem very funny to me because, I mean, don't, like, put your clothes on before you leave the house, George. Thanks, bud. But, you know what? If you're in a rush, you could be buttoning up while you're walking out the door. I guess there wasn't as much to rush for in the 18th century. So I found that one pretty fascinating. Now we're going to jump ahead here to number 15. This one, as funny as it might sound on the forefront, I actually gave a good. Keep your nails clean and short, and also your hands and teeth clean, yet without showing any great concern. Now, like I said, I actually gave this one a good because this is just good advice. Not specifically your nails and your teeth, but keep your hair trimmed. Not that I should talk, but you want to keep yourself tidy so that people have respect for you. At the same time, you don't want to go around being arrogant or cocky or conceited by saying, hey, look at how great I am. Look at how clean, my nails are all clean. My shirt is pressed. Like, just because you do have a pressed shirt doesn't mean you should be going around being braggy-waggy about it. And now we're going to move on. Now we start jumping ahead pretty quickly in the 110. We are going to rule the 24th. Do not laugh too much or too loud in public. Do not laugh too much or too loud in public. You can see where this is going. He's getting a big old uptight. George, we're allowed to have a good time, Mr. Washington. or Child Washington. Again, he was 16 when he copied these down. And again, this just because he copied them down, and they are good lessons by and large, it doesn't necessarily mean he believed all of it. It doesn't, he didn't take all of it with him in life. But from the character we learn about George Washington, he does seem to have carried most of these bits of advice and rules of civility with him for the remainder of his life. Again, one of the reasons I'm going through this and being silly about it is we look at Washington as this great untouchable character, and he has these rules of civility, but they are, of all the people to follow it, Washington did follow the rules pretty well. This one, it just seems like a little much. Anyone popping in? Okay, you're out again? That's all right. Anyone just coming in? We are talking about the Rules of Civility by George Washington. Now, next, what is the next one? We're going to pop... Yeah, have a laugh, George. Calm down. Okay, Rule the 28th. And this is what I'm going to elaborate a little bit on. If anyone come to speak with you while you are sitting, stand up, though he be your inferior. And when you present seats, let it be to everyone according to his degree. Now, pretty obviously, I'm going to pop it up real quick. I gave this one an uptight. This one's pretty uptight, but it's important to note because there are about 20 of the rules that are all basically the same as this one. A gigantic portion of this book has to do with number 28, and it is knowing your place in society. And it's extremely interesting to reflect on because, again, at this point, Washington was part of the wealthy elite, but he was like the lower class of wealthy elite, as we discussed with Mr. Troy yesterday. He was friends with the Fairfax family, who were literally nobles, and it was very important to know your place among rank. He talks in here about which side of a person you're supposed to walk on, depending on where they are in society, how you're supposed to greet people. Again, this one, literally, people are supposed to wait their turn to sit based on where they rank in society. It's a little irrelevant to this, but Christian Despina in Founding Martyr about Dr. Joseph Warren talks about Harvard and how the students were literally ranked when they got there based on their family's position in society. I know that's Massachusetts, and we're talking mostly about Virginia, but again, this was copied from an English translation of a French text. So this was very common throughout the Western world at the time, was to know your place in society. Anyone popping in? Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming. We are just talking about the rules. And this one, just to remind you, I did give this one an uptight, but to be fair, like I was saying, about 30 of the rules have to do with knowing your place in society. And I was thinking today, it reflects on in a society where people were slaves. Very much, this is still certainly relevant. Not only where George Washington compared to the noble Fairfax family that he knew, but the Jefferson family, who probably would have been slightly below him, and the Mason family, and then, the servants in his house, servants in other people's houses. Literally everyone had a rank, so to speak, in society, and a lot of the rules talk about knowing your rank in compared to others and how to treat other people. Although I do want to point out that this rule says, if anyone comes to speak with you while you are sitting, stand up, though he be your inferior. Now, I don't know if this would have directly applied to slaves, but it certainly seems like George Washington seems to be the type of person who would have stood up if a slave came to talk to him. Now, I should be speaking to an expert on that. I don't know a lot about the ins and outs of the workings of Mount Vernon in particular, but it's a really interesting way to look at things. Ginger, yes, I agree. Manners were very important to him, although as we're talking about, some of them are some are a little too uptight, and some of them are downright hilarious. So let's move on to the next one, so lest we make this video a little too long. The next quote, number 41, undertake not to teach your equal in the art himself professes. It savors of arrogance. And yes, much like the title behavior of the book, that is how he spells savors. So I spelt it the way it's spelled in the book, although it's not necessarily custom. I don't believe that's how you spelled it. Maybe it is. I'm not the best speller in the world. Undertake not to teach your equal in the art himself professes. And what he's saying there is, don't tell your doctor why you're sick. So is for in so many words. Don't tell your dad how to be your dad. Don't tell your mechanic how to fix your car. It savors of arrogance. You go to people for help because they can help you. Don't tell them how to help you. This one again is actually pretty good advice, but I did pop it in the funny column. It's pretty hilarious to me. So I will say that. We're gonna move along again, so we don't take up too much time with this video. We're going all the way up to 56. Associate yourself with men of good quality, if you esteem your own reputation, for it is better to be alone than in bad company. And this one I gave good. This is great advice. You hear it a lot with people who start businesses, entrepreneurs. You hear them say a lot, I surround myself with good people, the right people. I've also heard to surround yourself with people a little bit better than you, especially as far as musicians go. You want to be the worst. You want to be very good at your instrument and just barely the worst person in your band, because you'll always learn more. You can learn more. You'll get around better. As he references here, there's the whole guilty by association thing. If you're in bad company, one of the standout rules of civility, as Mr. Future President, young 16-year-old George Washington points out. So. I wanted to bring that one up for sure. Now we're going to pop all the way up to number 88 for our last of the 10, although I do have some honorable mentions I am going to peek at here. Be not tedious in discourse. Make not many digressions, nor repeat often the same manner of discourse. Now, I gave this one a good. I'm going to pop it up. Good. I gave this one a good. Now, again, there's a lot of bias here for my own preference. This one, as someone who's speaking regularly to an audience about sometimes repetitive topics, personally, I do my best to make sure I indicate the information I hope to get across here, but I, first of all, have a tendency to digress if I get on another story, or if you guys ask me I'm not going to say the wrong question, the right question, I can definitely veer off topic but I want to attempt not to digress. And there's a whole slew, about 15 of the rules are just like this one, where it's talking about how to speak to people. Stay on topic. Many of the rules are about staying on topic. Many of the rules are about, like he says, don't digress, pay attention, be a good listener. Things that we find fairly common today, and they found fairly common to them. But he never outright says don't be talkative. I guess he does kind of indicate don't talk too much, but he doesn't say hold back. He just says stay on topic, stay focused. There's also rules about, wait your turn and speak deliberately. Several of the rules are about speaking deliberately. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, before we go, those were the top 10. I didn't put up top 10 numbers because there's no order. They're in the order I put them in. But I did have 2 honorable mentions. The 23rd, when you see a crime punished, you may be inwardly pleased, but always show pity to the suffering offender. This is extremely interesting. I don't like to talk about modern politics on this channel, but we live in a modern world that does not take kindly to certain people are a little bit glib with the amount of glee they have at the misfortunes of others. I'm not making any accusations, but this is a great point Washington made. You can be happy that someone gets what they deserve, but don't walk around bragging about it and being too happy publicly about it. And what's really interesting about this is George Washington is a man who, during the Revolutionary War, would sentence his own soldiers to death. He would have his soldiers executed as a form of discipline. He also had many people lashed as a form of discipline. So while he may have been inwardly pleased about these happenings, Washington is known to have, pity is a good word, to be empathetic to the people that he was directly hurting. And lastly, I wanted to bring this one up. Number 16, the 69th. If two can, let me get it out. If two contend together, take not the part of either unconstrained, and be not obstinate in your own opinion. In things indifferent, be on the majority side. And I wanted to bring this up because, we think of Washington generally as above the politics, above the show. But no, what George Washington was, at his heart, a politician. I guess arguably an entrepreneur too, and a general. But I don't want to say first and foremost in his own mind, but he was the first president for a reason. He was an early politician in the United States. And it's really interesting to note, take not the part of either unconstrained. Look at both sides. Don't just immediately jump on one side. Really sit back and look. And it's interesting because as president, he would do this on many occasions. Sometimes he'd take Hamilton's side, who was usually hanging out with Henry Knox in the cabinet. Sometimes, less often, but sometimes he would take Jefferson's side, who was usually hanging out with Edmund Randolph, who was the first Attorney General in the cabinet. And what's really, really stuck out to me about this one is the last part. In things indifferent, be on the majority side. So what he's saying is, if it doesn't really matter which side is right, choose the side of the majority. Because again, the rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation are really there to help you get ahead. These are goals to help you establish yourself among your peers as respectable and full of honor, which, as we talk about, there was literally nothing more important to these people than their honor. That's why there were so many duels over honor. Most of the duels weren't over things we think of today, like spouses being unfaithful or people being mean. No, it was honor. So the idea of just, if you don't care, take the side the majority's on, people will be happy with you. More people will be happy with you. The more people that are happy with you, the happier you will be. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read the rules of civility, I forgot to put a link in the description below, but go check out the rules of civility. It's super cheap. Definitely get it for student or yourself. It's good to have around the house. They're very cheap, very thin, very small. Let me know in the description, if you've read them, what are your favorite rules of civility? And do you think George Washington could be just a little too uptight, or do you think he was... you think these rules are just right? So let me know in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back with another founder and a special guest tomorrow.